Let's talk about the deadliest cowboys of the Wild Wild West, explained like video game characters, judged by their dead-eye speed, their tactical smarts, the power of their names, and the evidence that survived the dust. Let's saddle up. At number 12, we're starting with the lowest HP gunslinger of the West, Doc Holliday. Born in Griffin, Georgia in 1851, Holliday began as a dentist before life pushed him somewhere far rougher. But tuberculosis hit him early, and the slow death sentence pushed him west, where the dry air helped his lungs and the gambling tables helped everything else. Doc didn't fight for pride. He fought because he had nothing left to lose. Holliday became a legend not through dozens of gunfights, but through a handful of moments where his nerve didn't just hold, it outclassed everyone in the room. The most famous, of course, was the OK Corral, where Doc walked into the fight, smiling, shotgun in hand, ready to tank damage like he had extra lives to burn. But Doc wasn't really a duelist. He was the wild card, sick, pale, unsteady on his feet, yet somehow unshakable when steel came out. Forgive me if I don't shake hands. His playstyle? The glass cannon. Squishy stats, maxed out fear resistance, burst damage when provoked. Doc Holliday lands in Tier 3 because his fearlessness was unmatched, but his overall record was thin, his documentation spotty, and his health kept him from ever posting the kind of kill count needed to climb higher. Hold up now, partner. If you're still in the saddle, put a bullet in that subscribe button, because we've got 11 more gunslingers riding in hot. At number 11, we've got the wild card of the frontier, John Wesley Hardin, the trigger-happy gunslinger who mixed raw talent with enough button mashing to make every town nervous. Born in Bonham, Texas in 1853, Hardin grew up fast and violent. By his late teens, his kill streak was climbing faster than his reputation, some in self-defense, some in pure hot-headed impulse, and in some stories, he definitely exaggerated himself. He could shoot straight, shoot fast, and stayed eerily calm when the iron came out. But discipline? Zero. Hardin didn't plan ambushes or long manhunts. He reacted, exploded, and then rode off before the dust settled. His skill was real, but his judgment was a D3 dice roll. The law chased him across Texas for years until he finally got caught in a no-escape cutscene and spent more than a decade behind bars, the longest forced cooldown in cowboy history. In his own defense, Hardin wrote the following in his autobiography: "I never killed a man that did not need killing." And when he got out in 1894, Hardin's big ego finally got the best of him. He got into a heated argument with John Selman Jr., ridiculed him in public, and then had him arrested just to humiliate him. And Selman's father took that personally. He walked into the Acme Saloon and settled the score with a surprise bullet to Hardin's skull. His playstyle? The hot shot. Deadly reflexes, quick temper, terrible decision-making. Hardin lands in Tier 3 because he was lethal and feared, but too reckless, too erratic, and too inconsistent to go any further. At number 10, we've got the smoothest gun hand on the frontier, Luke Short, the sharp-dressed gambler who carried himself like a PvP match was always one seat over. Born in Fort Smith, Arkansas in 1854, Short bounced between Texas cattle towns, saloons, and railroad hubs, earning a reputation for being calm, clean, and way too quick to underestimate. He wasn't the loudest man in the room, no, but he was the one everyone kept an eye on. Short's defining moment came in 1887 during his showdown with Jim Courtright. Courtright tried to intimidate him, reaching for his gun mid-conversation. Short didn't even drop a frame. He slipped his hand under his coat, drew first, and put Courtright down before Courtright's barrel even cleared leather. It all came down to reflexes, and Short's reaction time lived up to his namesake. Quick mind, quicker trigger. One account from a gambling camp saloon quoted Short as saying, "You will not make anything good for me." That is my bet, and I will not permit anyone to take it. Short wasn't a brawler, and he wasn't a hunter. He was a precision specialist, someone who avoided fights until the last possible second, then ended them with surgical efficiency. His playstyle? The slick shot. Fast hands, cold nerves, perfect timing. Luke Short lands in Tier 3 because he was deadly cool under pressure, but his playtime was limited. At number 9, we've got the Frontier's deadliest sniper, Tom Horn, the cold-eyed marksman who treated the West like one giant open-world map. Born in Memphis, Missouri in 1860, Horn drifted west until he found his purpose as a cavalry scout, then as an interpreter, then as a tracker, every role leveling up his map awareness, patience, and long-range precision. By the time he joined the Pinkertons' National Detective Agency, Horn had become a walking heat-seeking algorithm built for frontier manhunts. Horn's style was simple. Learn the land, shadow the target, climb to high ground, and end the fight before the enemy even realized the encounter had spawned. He wasn't a saloon brawler or a street dueling guy. He was a one-shot build with stealth bonuses stacked to the ceiling. His most notorious kill was the Bucksnort ambush, where Horn set up on a ridge, waited for hours, and fired a single shot that dropped his target instantly. But Horn lived in the gray zone, morally speaking, part lawman, part scout, part hired gun. And that zone went pitch black after the Nickel killing. A 14-year-old boy was shot during a land war. The evidence was flimsy, and Horn's enemies pushed the rumor mill until public pressure spiked. A drunken confession, political heat, and bad optics did the rest. The public turned on him faster than any bounty board. Whether he was guilty or scapegoated is still debated, but the fallout ended with Horn on the wrong side of a rope in 1903. His playstyle? The long-range predator. Silent setup, perfect tracking, lethal first contact. Tom Horn lands in Tier 2 because he was smart, calm, and deadly at distances most gunmen couldn't dream of. But controversy, disputed kills, and a murky legal trail kept him from climbing into the top tier. At number 8, we've got the DPS hot hand of the frontier, Dallas Studenmeyer. Born in Aberdeen, Mississippi in 1845, Studenmeyer served in the Civil War, drifted west, and eventually became a marshal of El Paso, a town with more gunfights than streetlights. Within days of taking the badge, Studenmeyer did what no one else could. He cleaned up the place by himself, gun in each hand. In the 4 dead in 5 seconds gunfight, a chaotic street brawl erupted, bullets flying, people screaming, and Studenmeyer stepped into the mess like he'd entered the chat in all caps. He drew, fired, and dropped multiple shooters in a blur, solving the entire encounter faster than the town could even process what happened. Other lawmen hesitated. Studenmeyer simply executed, but chaos followed him like an annoying NPC companion, programmed to walk into every trap on the map. He drank too much, escalated every feud, and treated insults like mini boss fights he couldn't walk away from. Well, eventually his own volatility caught up to him. A long-running dispute with the Manning brothers, who blamed Dallas for killing their friend. It was a revenge beef, pure and simple. The Mannings wanted payback, and Dallas kept poking the fire instead of walking away. The feud simmered for months, fueled by alcohol, threats, and El Paso saloon politics. And when the Mannings arranged a peace meeting, Dallas walked in expecting a truce, but triggered a game-over cutscene instead. The two brothers opened fire from different angles, and Dallas never got a clean draw, deleted from the server in a matter of seconds. His playstyle? The powder keg. Massive damage output, zero chill, high volatility. Dallas Studenmeyer lands in Tier 2 because nobody wanted to take him one-on-one. But the same rage-coded personality that made him terrifying also made him easy to bait. and trash talking has a way of undoing even the most talented of players. At number 7, we've got the tactician of the frontier, Bill Tillman. Born in Fort Dodge, Iowa in 1854, Tillman wasn't built for chaos. He was built for control. While other lawmen tried to outshoot the West, Tillman outplanned it. He scouted terrain, studied habits, tracked patiently, and waited for the exact window where violence wasn't necessary. If Studenmeyer was the powder keg, Tillman was a pressure valve. His rise began in Dodge City, where he teamed up with legends like Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson. But unlike them, Tillman steered clear of saloon showdown theatrics. Tillman was far more interested in collecting clean arrests, suspects brought in alive, bounties captured without shootouts. He wasn't flashy, and he never rage-baited anyone. He just completed the mission with a level head. One of his sharpest feats came during the Oklahoma Territory years, when the region was crawling with outlaws, claim jumpers, and wannabe desperados. Tillman handled all of it with calm, methodical pressure, staking out hideouts, predicting escape routes, only pulling the trigger when he had no other choice, and using smart positioning like he toggled off fog of war before anyone else spawned in. In one chase, he mapped the outlaw's whole loop in his head, intercepted him at the final fork, and waited in the one spot that closed off every exit. When the outlaw arrived and saw Tillman standing there, calm, unarmed, and unhurried, the fight left him, and he surrendered on the spot to his inevitable game-over cutscene. Where most frontier lawmen eventually burned out or got deleted in some saloon dispute, Tillman kept working for decades, that is, until he was shot by a drunken prohibition agent in 1924. A tragic friendly-fire death from someone with no situational awareness. President Theodore Roosevelt asked how he'd survived so long. Tillman said the following in response: "A man who knows he's right has an edge on a man who knows he's wrong." His playstyle? The referee. Total visibility, flawless discipline, and almost zero bloodshed. Bill Tillman lands in Tier 2 because he consistently cleared out levels with zero wasted inputs or unnecessary violence. But he's not Tier 1 because Bill dominated his corner of the game, running the same levels over and over again. He never expanded his mastery to the big national stages that define Tier 1. At number 6, we've got the tank of the frontier, Wyatt Earp. Born in Monmouth, Illinois in 1848, Earp drifted across the West as a buffalo hunter, gambler, saloon keeper, and deputy. But his real superpower came from one trait: he was impossible to rattle. Gun barrels in his face, mobs screaming, drunks lunging, tempers flaring. Earp always stayed cool enough to keep his crosshairs steady. His motto? Fast is fine, but accuracy is everything. In a gunfight, you need to take your time in a hurry. His legend crystallized at the OK Corral, where Earp didn't charge in like a berserker or dance around like a duelist. He walked into the alley, ignored incoming fire, and focused entirely on executing clean shots. But his real mastery showed after the OK Corral in the Earp Vendetta Ride, where Wyatt hunted down the men who ambushed his brother Morgan. He didn't rage quit or lose control. He tracked Florentino Cruz across miles of dry country, maneuvered him on a ridge, and ended the fight before Cruz even drew. Then, he ambushed Curly Bill at Iron Springs, walking through gunfire like he was invincible and dropping him with a single deliberate shot. What made Earp dangerous wasn't speed, it was his decision timing. Other cowboys tried to win by reacting fast. Earp won by acting as soon as he knew he had the high ground. And unlike the powder kegs and showboats of the West, Earp kept his life intact through discipline, presence, and a refusal to be baited into dumb fights. People didn't just respect Wyatt, They reorganized the entire lobby when he entered the room. His play style? The unshakable tank. High composure, perfect timing, no tilt, no fear. Wyatt Earp lands in Tier 2 because he controlled rooms, arrests, and shootouts by keeping his cool when everyone else logged off under pressure. But he lacked the high-stakes, high-volume confrontations that the top tier is defined by. At number 5, we've got the Swiss Army knife of the frontier, Bat Masterson. Born in Henryville, Quebec in 1853, Masterson came up as a buffalo hunter, a scout, a gambler, a deputy, a sheriff, and somehow managed to be good at every single role without leaning too hard into any of them. He wasn't the fastest gun or the deadliest gun, but he was one of the smartest guns, and that made him dangerous no matter what level he was playing. Masterson had a talent for doing something most cowboys couldn't: not shooting when it wasn't necessary. He didn't waste bullets, didn't waste motion, and didn't let his ego push him into bad fights. But when he did choose violence, his aim was so clean and so deliberate that the encounter usually ended before the other guy processed the threat. Masterson once said, "If you're going to shoot, shoot straight. A miss is as good as a mile." And he lived by that rule. One shot placed exactly where it needed to go. His finest streak came during his years in Dodge City and Ford County, basically the PvP capital of the frontier, where he put down a bloodthirsty mob at the train station with nothing but calm authority and ended the infamous Battle of the Plaza in one clean shot. Bat was also well respected for taking down dangerous men alive, like gambler Alf Walker, a man drunk, armed, and threatening to kill half the saloon. Masterson walked in, assessed the situation, and disarmed Walker in one controlled pistol whip. No bullets necessary. Textbook Bat, precision over bloodshed. And unlike most frontier legends, Bat didn't log off after losing some petty saloon grudge. He evolved. Masterson swapped the law for journalism and eventually became a sports writer in New York, pulling off one of the wildest career respects in American history. But even in a suit and tie, the man carried the same trait he had on all the planes: perfect situational awareness. His playstyle? The Swiss Army shot. Disciplined, precise, adaptable, always equipped for the mission. Bat lands in Tier 2 because he mastered the rare art of ending fights before they began. But the frontier remembers violence much more than restraint, and without the legendary shootouts of the top tier, his low body count keeps him just shy of Tier 1. At number 4, we've got the precision machine of the frontier, Ben Thompson, one of the most technically perfect shooters the West ever produced. Born in Nottingley, England in 1843, Thompson came to America as a kid and grew up drifting through the roughest work the frontier could offer: soldier, scout, gambler, saloon owner, and eventually Marshal of Austin. Every chapter leveled up a different part of his build, but the one constant was his aim. If Thompson pulled a gun, the fight was already over. What set him apart wasn't just his speed, it was technical mastery. Other gunmen relied on nerves or rage or instinct. Thompson relied on form, measured steps, clean draw, perfect sight alignment, and a trigger pull so smooth it looked scripted. His duels became gunslinging case studies. He treated gunslinging like a profession, not a thrill, not a spectacle, just a job to be completed with technical precision. Thompson once faced a drunk gunman who begged him for a duel. The man was jittery, angry, and shaken too hard to fight clean. Thompson stared at him and said, "Go home. I won't kill you this way." He actually escorted the man outside, gave him water, and told him to sleep it off. But like many high-skill builds in the West, Thompson's greatest weakness was his confidence. In 1884, Thompson walked into the Vaudeville Theater in San Antonio, the same place where he'd killed the manager a year earlier in self-defense. Everyone told him not to go back. Everyone. But Thompson believed in his reputation more than the danger. He stepped into the building, made it 10 feet inside, and then the lights dropped. From the balcony and wings, hidden gunmen opened fire. Thompson staggered, tried to reach for his pistol, but the ambush was already decided. He was shot multiple times before he could pull the trigger. The man who could win any fair fight was taken out by a true game-over scene, closed curtains and all. His playstyle? The technician. Flawless mechanics, elite accuracy, lethal execution under pressure. I rank Ben Thompson as Tier 2 because he was one of the most technically perfect gunslingers of the frontier, but his confidence verged on hubris, and a few bad reads kept him from climbing into Tier 1. Hold up, partner. Before we cross into Tier 1, hit subscribe. You wouldn't want to miss the final bosses of the frontier, would you? And hey, if you haven't seen our last video, 12 Deadliest Pirates, a lot of booty in that one, in every sense. Anyway, back to the Wild West. At number 3, we've got the cold, methodical hunter of the frontier, Pat Garrett, the lawman who didn't outshoot legends, he outthought them. Born in Cusseta, Alabama in 1850, Garrett drifted west as a cowboy and buffalo hunter before stepping into law enforcement, a career choice that turned his calm, analytical demeanor into one of the most effective track and builds in frontier history. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't theatrical, he wasn't a saloon hero. Garrett played the West like a stealth strategy game, winning by patience, terrain reading, and immaculate timing. His defining mission was the one that cemented his legacy: the manhunt for Billy the Kid. This wasn't some chaotic duel or street brawl. It was a long-haul pursuit that demanded planning over bravado. Garrett mapped out hideouts, predicted travel routes, interrogated contacts, pressured alliances, and squeezed Billy's options until the kid had nowhere left to run. When the final encounter came, Garrett didn't rely on speed or luck. He was simply standing in the one place Billy didn't expect, landing a calculated kill shot that felt like the finishing move on the last level. And afterward, he even said, "I bear no ill will toward the kid." It wasn't bravado, just the calm realism of a man who saw the hunt as his duty, not his vendetta. And unlike the hotheads and gunslingers of the West, Garrett understood something essential. You win more fights before the gun leaves the holster than after. He used misdirection, patience, and deliberate positioning to control outcomes long before bullets flew. He wasn't the fastest draw. He was the guy who made sure the draw never even mattered. But Garrett's life after Billy the Kid wasn't smooth. Politics, enemies, and bad land deals pulled him into conflicts where his trademark patience couldn't save him. He died in 1808 under suspicious circumstances. A roadside dispute, an ambush, a gunshot from someone he likely underestimated. The ultimate irony: the master hunter walked into the wrong encounter for once. His playstyle? The strategist, map control, ambush timing, and flawless long game planning. I rank Pat Garrett at number 3 because he wasn't the fastest gun in the West, but he was one of the smartest, most calculated hunters the frontier ever produced. At number 2, we've got the final boss duelist of the American frontier, Wild Bill Hickok. Born in Homer, Illinois in 1838, Hickok started as a stagecoach driver and lawman, but it didn't take long for the West to realize he had God-tier reaction time. While most cowboys fired from the hip or panicked under pressure, Hickok drew smooth, aimed true, and let the other guy's nerves self-destruct. His duels became the stuff of frontier legend, especially the Springfield shootout of 1865, one of the few fully documented one-on-one gunfights in the West. Two men squared up at range, settled their footing, and Hickok ended it with a deliberate sighted shot like he was executing a frame-perfect input. No hesitation, no bullet spam, just one clean decision, one clean elimination. Hickok once said, "I never said I was the best shot, but I never met the man who could prove otherwise." And after Springfield, nobody tried. But Hickok's deadliest stat wasn't his speed, it was his presence. He carried himself with such icy confidence that most would-be challengers preferred to log off rather than face him. Once, in Hays City, Hickok walked into a saloon after a long night on the trail. The moment he stepped inside, the piano stopped mid-note. Gamblers closed their hands. No threats, just Wild Bill's presence rewriting the entire lobby in real time. There's another story from Abilene, where two armed cowboys tried to jump Hickok from behind. They thought they had the drop, until both heard the click of Hickok's pistols being cocked under the table. Neither man ever saw him draw. Neither man took the shot. Both backed out of the saloon without breathing too loud. That was Hickok. He shut down fights with presence alone. Still, even a flawless duelist can't survive a bad spawn. In 1876, while playing poker in Deadwood, Hickok sat with his back to the door. The single break in a lifetime of perfect awareness. Jack McCall walked up from behind and shot him in the back of the head, ending the run of the West's cleanest PvP build in the cheapest death imaginable. His playstyle? The duelist. Fast draw, steady aim, iron nerves, zero panic meter. Wild Bill Hickok lands in Tier 1 because he was the closest thing the West ever had to a flawless, technically perfect duelist. At number 1, we've got Bass Reeves, the one-man SWAT team on horseback who hunted fugitives for weeks at a time and brought in thousands alive. Born into slavery in Crawford County, Arkansas in 1838, Reeves escaped during the Civil War, resettled in Indian Territory, and built himself into one of the greatest trackers the West ever produced. He spoke multiple native languages, read terrain like a second sight, and could follow a trail across stone, bush, rivers, anywhere. If Reeves marked you as his target, you were basically forced into an inescapable game-over cutscene and waiting to find out how he was gonna catch you. Where other lawmen fired first and sorted the details later, Reeves used patience, disguises, and tactical pressure to squeeze fugitives into surrender. On one mission, Reeves disguised himself as a ragged, wandering tramp in order to infiltrate a fugitive's cabin. He showed up covered in dirt, wearing old clothes, and pretended to be a harmless drifter. The outlaw's family fed him, let him sleep inside, and talked openly about the fugitive returning the next morning. Reeves stayed the night, ate their breakfast, and when the outlaw walked through the door, Reeves snapped back into deputy marshal mode, whipped out the warrant, and arrested him right before the man could even touch his gun. Another time, Reeves disguised himself as a preacher to get close to two brothers wanted for murder. He rode up to their cabin, wearing a long coat and carrying a Bible, and spent the evening preaching to them about redemption. The deadliest NBC disguise the frontier ever spawned. The brothers let their guard down, even inviting Reeves to stay the night. At sunrise, when they bowed their heads to pray, Reeves drew both pistols at once, sermon over, and marched them back to the fort alive. Reeves later said, "I always said I would rather bring in a man alive if I could. Dead men can't face a judge." And he lived by that philosophy. And when violence was necessary, Reeves stayed calm enough to pass every reaction check in the book. More than a dozen men died trying to kill him. None succeeded. And his biggest flex? Longevity. Reeves served 32 straight years as a deputy U.S. Marshal. Through gunfights, manhunts, storms, politics, and shifting borders, retiring with a record cleaner and heavier than anyone else on this list. And here's the number nobody touches. One credible source states Reeves had made more than 3,000 arrests by November 1901. That's more arrests than all the cowboys on this top 12 list combined. Nobody even gets close. Tillman's the runner-up, and he's only in the low hundreds. Hickok, about a dozen documented arrests. Most of the others, gunfighters, not long-haul lawmen. And none of them had Reeves' toolkit. Hickok was a PvP legend, but not a tracker. Earp had presence, but never ran deep cover disguises. Reeves did it all. Stealth, infiltration, tracking, hostage retrieval, plus the deadliest jurisdiction in the entire West, Indian Territory, a region crawling with criminals who made most town drunks look like tutorial-level enemies. The average lawman couldn't last a month there. Reeves lasted 3 decades. So, let's get one thing straight. Bass Reeves isn't a diversity hire. This is a clear, clean, stat-driven #1 pick, no debate. Bass Reeves is the man. His playstyle? The hunter. Master tracking, iron composure, infinite endurance, and perfect timing. Bass Reeves lands at #1 because no cowboy, gunfighter, or lawman in the West matched his combination of tactical intelligence, lethal calm, and sheer, sustained excellence. And that's the list. 12 cowboys, 12 wild skill trees, 1 meta frontier. Now, let's hear from the posse. Who would you saddle up with as your main? And which gunslinger should have warranted a top 12 badge? Let the debates begin. So long, cowboy.